The night on planet Varela was darker than usual. The wind carried dust and the sharp smell of burned metal from the nearby mines. Human engineer Evan Carter was fixing a broken communication tower at the edge of an abandoned station. He was tired, hungry, and just wanted to finish his work before sunrise. But then he heard it. A sound so soft that it could have been the wind, yet it wasn't. It was a cry. A faint, trembling cry. Evan froze. There were no settlements nearby. This part of the planet was marked as unsafe. Still, the sound came again, this time clearer, closer. It was a child's voice. He grabbed his flashlight and looked around. The metal ground creaked under his boots as he followed the noise. His heart started to beat faster. The cries were coming from behind a pile of scrap containers near the old hangar. When he moved one of the boxes, his light fell on something that made his breath stop. 5 small alien girls huddled together, their eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Their skin was pale blue, covered with thin dust. They looked terrified. Evan lowered his weapon slowly. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." One of the girls, a little older than the rest, stepped forward. She tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Please, help us." Her words were weak, her body shaking. Evan could see the bruises on her arms. The others were trembling, their tiny hands clutching each other's clothes. They looked like they hadn't eaten in days. Evan's mind raced. What were alien children doing out here? The nearest city was hundreds of kilometers away. He checked the area with his scanner. No life signs except them. "Where are your parents?" he asked gently. The girl shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Gone. Taken away." Before Evan could ask more, the youngest one collapsed on the ground. Her breathing was shallow. Panic filled the group. The others cried out, calling her name. Lyra. Evan quickly knelt beside her and checked her pulse. She was alive but weak. Without thinking twice, he lifted her into his arms. "Come on," he said. "You're coming with me." The other girls hesitated, afraid. Evan turned and pointed toward his small cargo ship. "It's safe there. I promise." After a few moments, they followed him silently. Inside the ship, Evan gave them water and emergency food rations. The girls ate slowly, as if they weren't sure the food was real. Their glowing eyes flickered softly under the cabin light. Once they calmed down, Evan asked, "Who hurt you?" The oldest girl looked at him with fear. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Bad men. They took us from our home. They said we were special. They did things." Evan felt anger burning inside him. "What kind of men?" he asked. "Not men," she said. "They're hunters. They work for the Syndicate." The name made Evan stiffen. He had heard of the Varela Syndicate, a group known for black market experiments on rare alien species. But children? He clenched his fists. "They will come for us," the girl continued. "They always do." Evan looked at the scanner again. The radar blinked once, then twice. A small red dot appeared in the corner of the screen. "Someone's tracking us," he muttered. The girl's eyes widened with terror. "They found us," one whispered. Evan took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. "No, not yet. But they will if we don't move fast." He ran to the control panel and started powering up the engines. The girls held on to each other, watching him with hope and fear. As the ship's hum grew louder, a faint alarm echoed through the night. Outside, distant lights appeared on the horizon. 3 small ships descending through the dark clouds. Evan's heartbeat quickened. "They're here," he whispered. The oldest girl looked at him, tears in her glowing eyes. "You should let us go," she said softly. "They'll kill you if you help us." Evan turned toward her and shook his head. "Not gonna happen," he said firmly. "I don't leave kids to die." He gripped the pilot's controls tightly as the engines roared to life. The girl sat behind him, clutching the seats, trembling but trusting. Through the window, Evan saw the enemy ship spreading out, searchlights scanning the dark ground. He whispered to himself, "All right, Carter, you just adopted 5 alien kids in the middle of nowhere. Let's see how this goes." The ship lifted off into the stormy sky. Thunder cracked. Lightning flashed. And as the girls huddled close together, none of them knew this was only the beginning. Evan's ship rose through thick clouds, shaking under the power of the storm. Lightning flashed across the glass window and the thunder roared like angry beasts. The 5 alien girls sat behind him, clutching each other, their wide glowing eyes fixed on him as if he was their last hope. "Hang on," Evan said firmly, trying to sound calm though his heart pounded hard in his chest. The radar on his control screen blinked red. 3 ships following close. The storm gave him cover, but it also made flying dangerous. The controls jerked and sparks flew from the side panels. "Come on, stay with me," he muttered, slamming a switch. A sudden blast hit the rear of the ship. The girls screamed. The youngest cried, "They're shooting at us." Evan turned sharply to avoid another hit. The storm hid them for a few seconds, lightning flashing like wildfire. But another red alert flashed. Shields down by 30%. He cursed under his breath and checked the scanner again. The Syndicate hunters were fast. Sleek black ships designed for capture, not mercy. He needed to think quickly. Fighting was suicide. Outrunning them was the only chance. He switched to manual mode, pushing the ship lower, diving into the thick storm clouds. The entire cabin shook. The girls clung tighter to each other. One of them, Lyra, the one who had fainted before, was still weak. She whispered, "They always find us. No one ever escapes them." Evan looked at her in the rear mirror. Then maybe it's time that changed. Suddenly a mechanical voice echoed from the comms panel. "Unidentified human vessel. Stop your engines. Hand over the subjects." Evan's jaw tightened. "Subjects?" he repeated bitterly. "They're kids, you monsters." The voice came again, colder. "You have been warned." Before he could reply, another explosion rocked the ship. The blast sent them spinning sideways. One of the girls hit her head and began to cry. Alarms screamed everywhere. Evan's vision blurred for a second, but he gripped the controls tight and pulled the ship back up. He saw a canyon ahead, deep and wide. If he could reach it, maybe the rocky walls could hide them. "Hold on." He shouted again, pushing the engines to full power. The small ship roared forward. The pursuing vessels fired lasers that barely missed them. Red light cut through the dark storm. He dived into the canyon. Dust and lightning flashed together. For a few seconds, the hunters lost sight of them. The girls were shaking, crying softly. Evan checked the ship's health. Engines half damaged, fuel leaking, shields failing. They needed to hide. He found a narrow cave opening halfway along the canyon and forced the ship inside. The metal scraped the stone, sparks flying. The sound of grinding steel filled the air, but the ship finally stopped. They were inside. Safe, for now. Evan quickly turned off all power systems to hide their heat signature. The ship went dark, leaving only the soft glow from the girls' eyes. "Stay quiet," he whispered. "They'll scan the area." The girls nodded silently. One of them reached for his hand and held it tightly. Her small fingers were cold, trembling. Evan didn't pull away. Minutes passed like hours. The sound of the hunters' ships hummed above the canyon, scanning, searching. Every second felt like forever. Finally, the noise began to fade. The radar screen turned clear. Evan sighed in relief and whispered, "They're gone. For now." He looked back. The girls were exhausted, their faces pale. He gave them more water and small food packs. The youngest smiled weakly. "You didn't leave us." "Never planned to," Evan said, forcing a small smile, but his mind was racing. He had to find a way to remove the trackers inside them, or the hunters would find them again. He pulled out his emergency med kit and turned on a small scanner. "Lyra, come here," he said softly. The girl hesitated but walked closer. The scanner beeped near her neck. A tiny device buried under her skin glowed on the screen. Evan's eyes narrowed. "Found it." He grabbed a surgical laser, took a deep breath, and said, "This might sting a little." The girls watched as he carefully cut around the small implant. Lyra winced but didn't cry. After a tense moment, the tiny metal chip dropped onto the floor, blinking red. Then it stopped blinking. Evan smashed it under his boot. "There," he said. "One less chain." But before they could celebrate, the ship's motion sensor beeped softly. Someone was outside the cave. Evan turned off the device, his hand going to his blaster. He whispered, "Stay low. Don't make a sound." The girls crouched behind the seats, eyes wide. Footsteps echoed faintly on the stone. A shadow passed by the ship's window. Evan aimed his gun, finger on the trigger. His pulse thundered in his ears. The shadow paused, then moved away. Silence. After a minute, Evan lowered his weapon slightly, but the tension didn't fade. He looked at the frightened faces staring back at him. "We're not safe yet," he said quietly. "They'll keep coming." He looked out into the dark cave and whispered to himself, "Tomorrow we move. Before they find us again." Outside in the endless storm, a faint red light blinked on a distant ridge. The hunters had already marked their next target. The next morning came with a heavy silence. The storm outside had calmed, but the thick gray clouds still covered the sun. Inside the cave, the air smelled of dust and smoke. Evan sat near the ship's broken panel, repairing a damaged power cell. His hands were trembling slightly. He hadn't slept all night. The 5 alien girls were still asleep, lying close together under a thermal blanket. Their faces looked peaceful, innocent, almost human. For a moment, Evan forgot they were being hunted. Then he saw the burned mark on the ship's hull, evidence of the Syndicate's last attack. And reality returned. They weren't safe. Not yet. Evan finished fixing the cell and stood up. He looked at the radar, no red dots. The hunters weren't nearby, but that could change any moment. He sighed. Time to move. He woke the girls gently. Hey, little ones, we need to leave this place before they find us. The oldest, Lyra, sat up, rubbing her eyes. Where will we go? There's a human outpost 200 kilometers east, Evan said. If we reach it, we'll be safe. The girls exchanged worried glances. We can't fly? One asked softly. Evan shook his head. The ship's too damaged. We'll walk. They stepped out of the cave into the cold wind. The land stretched endlessly before them. Dark soil, broken rocks, and the faint light of twin suns rising through the haze. Evan adjusted his backpack and handed water to the girls. Stay close. Don't wander. We move fast and rest only when needed. For hours they walked in silence. The ground was rough, and their small feet left uneven prints in the dust. Every sound made Evan glance over his shoulder. The wind, the rustle of stones, the faint hum of distant engines. By noon, the suns were blazing overhead. One of the girls, Mira, stumbled, holding her leg. Evan quickly lifted her into his arms. You're okay, I've got you. She smiled weakly. You're strong for a human. He chuckled softly. You should see me on a good day. The others giggled a little, and for a brief moment their fear faded. But that peace didn't last. A distant rumble echoed through the air. Evan stopped and looked back. Far behind, something shimmered, a black drone flying low and scanning the ground. They found us, he muttered. The girls froze. Panic filled their faces. What do we do? Lyra asked, voice shaking. Evan quickly pointed toward a cluster of old ruins nearby. There, run! They sprinted across the open ground, dust rising behind them. The drone's light swept across the desert, growing closer. Evan reached the ruins first, pulling the girls inside a half-collapsed structure. Stay quiet, he whispered, drawing his blaster. The drone hovered overhead, its red eye scanning the area. It emitted a sharp sound, beep, 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 searching for energy signals. Evan held his breath. Suddenly, one of the girls gasped softly, covering her mouth too late. The drone turned toward the sound, laser light locking on. Evan fired first. The blue beam hit the drone dead center. It exploded in a burst of light and smoke. The sound echoed across the desert. Silence followed, but not safety. They'll know where we are now, Evan said grimly. We have to keep moving. They walked again, faster this time. The heat burned their skin, the wind cut their faces, but no one complained. Fear gave them strength. As night fell, they found shelter inside a cracked stone arch. Evan shared what little food was left. The girls sat close, whispering quietly. Then something strange happened. The youngest, Rena, began humming a soft tune. The others joined her. Their voices blended beautifully like wind through crystal. Evan smiled faintly. That's beautiful. What song is that? Lyra looked up. It's not a song. It's how our kind calls to the stars. Evan didn't understand, but before he could ask, a faint blue glow began to spread around them. The air shimmered softly. What's happening? He asked, standing quickly. The girls looked surprised, too. It only happens when we're scared, Lyra whispered. It's not supposed to happen anymore. Evan stared, amazed. The glow came from their skin, forming light patterns in the air. The wind shifted suddenly, blowing harder. The glow pulsed with their heartbeats. The storm clouds above started to swirl again. Evan realized it. They were somehow connected to the planet's energy. The storm was reacting to them. He looked at them with new understanding. You're not just children, are you? Lyra shook her head slowly. They made us different. That's why the Syndicate wants us. Evan knelt in front of them. Whatever you are, you're not property. You're alive. You're free, Rena smiled shyly. You really think so? I know so, Evan said firmly. Suddenly, a loud boom echoed from the horizon. Engines. He looked up and saw lights descending again. 3 new ships, they found us, Evan said sharply. Get ready to run. The girls stood holding each other's hands, the blue glow returning around them. The ground began to tremble faintly. Evan aimed his blaster, teeth clenched. No one's taking you again. And as the night wind howled and the ships descended, the faint glow around the alien girls began to grow brighter, like stars awakening after 1,000 years. The night sky over Varela glowed faint blue as the storm clouds rolled away. Evan and the girls hid inside the ancient ruins, the sound of enemy ships echoing faintly in the distance. The glow from the girls' skin had faded, but the air around them still felt charged with strange energy. Evan stared at them silently, his heart still pounding. He had seen many things across the galaxy, wars, machines, and even alien beasts, but never something like this. What are you? He finally asked. His voice was quiet, filled with both curiosity and fear. Lyra looked down, her small hands trembling. We don't know, she said softly. We only know what they told us. Evan leaned forward. Who told you? The Syndicate, she whispered. They made us in their labs. They said we were born to become weapons, living energy sources. Evan froze. Weapons? The other girls nodded sadly. They mixed blood from different races, said Mira. They wanted us to control storms, to make lightning obey. Evan took a step back. The thought of using children for war made his stomach twist. They made you do that? They trained us to hurt people, Lyra said, tears filling her glowing eyes. If we disobeyed, they punished us. We tried to run. Only we survived. Evan clenched his fist tightly. You're not weapons. You're kids. What they did was wrong. Rena, the youngest, looked up at him. But when we get scared, the energy comes out. It hurts things. It's not safe for anyone near us. Evan sighed. You're safe with me. I'll figure something out. The girls exchanged glances. They wanted to believe him. And for the first time in their short lives, someone actually said they were more than experiments. Hours passed. The group sat quietly inside the ruins. Evan studied old carvings on the walls, spiral patterns and glowing lines that matched the same light the girls had produced. He brushed off the dust and noticed symbols of hands reaching toward stars. Look at this, he said, calling them closer. This place, it's ancient. These markings, maybe this planet has a connection to you. Lyra touched the wall gently. The carving shimmered under her hand, lighting up in the same blue hue as her skin. Evan stepped back, stunned. It reacts to you. The girls looked around in wonder. The light spread along the walls, revealing hidden paths and old technology buried in the stone. One chamber opened slowly with a deep mechanical hum. Inside there were crystal pillars glowing faintly. In the center stood a large circular platform covered in alien symbols. Rena gasped. It feels alive. Evan's scanner beeped wildly. The readings showed massive energy under the surface. Whatever this place is, he said, it's not just ruins. It's some kind of ancient reactor. Suddenly, the radar flashed red. Multiple signals approaching fast. The Syndicate ships had found them again. Evan grabbed his blaster and looked at the girls. We can't stay here. They'll surround us. But this place knows us, Lyra said suddenly. It called us here. Maybe it can protect us. Before Evan could argue, a deep rumble shook the ground. The crystal pillars glowed brighter. A low humming filled the air, almost like a heartbeat. Lyra, what are you doing? Evan shouted over the noise. Lyra's eyes blazed with light. I don't know. It's reacting to me. The floor began to pulse with blue light that traveled across the room like flowing water. The girls instinctively joined hands, their energy combining. Evan shielded his face as the glow became blinding. The carvings around them lit up completely, sending a beam of light straight through the ceiling into the sky. From above, the Syndicate ships slowed down, their scanners going wild. One of the pilots yelled, "Massive energy surge! Pull back!" But it was too late. The light struck them like lightning, disabling their systems instantly. Inside the ruins, the girls' bodies floated a few inches off the ground, surrounded by glowing dust. Their hair flowed as if underwater. They looked peaceful, no longer afraid. Evan could barely stand from the energy pressure, but he refused to leave them. You have to stop. You'll burn yourselves out. Lyra turned her head toward him, her voice echoing with strange calm. It's okay. We're not weapons anymore. We're Free. The light faded slowly, leaving only silence. The girls landed softly, their glow dimming. The storm outside had completely vanished, and the air smelled clean, fresh. Evan rushed to them, kneeling beside Lyra. "Are you all right?" She nodded weakly. "Yes, the planet helped us. It remembers us." "The planet remembers?" Evan repeated, confused. "It's alive," she said softly. "We were made from its heart. That's why it listens when we cry." Evan looked at the glowing carvings, his mind struggling to process what he'd seen. These weren't just alien children, they were connected to the world itself. He stood up and looked toward the horizon. The Syndicate ships were gone, scattered by the blast. But he knew they would return. He looked back at the girls and said quietly, "We need to reach the human outpost before they do. Whatever you are, we're not letting them take you again." The girls nodded, and as they left the glowing ruins behind, the walls seemed to hum softly, like a promise that the planet itself was watching over them. The next morning, a pale sun rose over the ruins of Virella. The wind carried soft dust whispering across endless empty plains. Evan Carter stood at the entrance of the ancient temple, watching the horizon. His ship was destroyed. The Syndicate's scanners would return soon, and the only way out was across the harsh wasteland. Behind him, the 5 alien girls were waking up. Their small voices filled the silence, tired but hopeful. They had survived another night. Evan turned to them with a firm smile. "Pack what you can carry. We move now," Lyra frowned. "But where will we go?" "To the human outpost 2 days east," Evan replied. "Once we reach it, no Syndicate will touch you again." The girls nodded slowly. They trusted him now. Evan loaded his backpack with water flasks, food rations, and his blaster. He tore a piece of metal from the broken ship to use as a makeshift shield. Then he looked at them. "Stay close. Keep quiet. The desert doesn't forgive mistakes." They began walking under the twin suns. The heat was cruel. The sky shimmered silver and orange, and the ground cracked beneath their feet. The girl's blue skin glowed faintly, reflecting sunlight like glass. Evan walked ahead, scanning constantly for movement. By noon, the group reached a long ridge covered in black rocks. They stopped to rest under its shadow. The youngest girl, Rena, took a sip of water and asked softly, "Evan, why are you helping us?" He paused, surprised by her question. "Because someone has to," he said simply. "When I see children scared and running for their lives, I can't just walk away." Rena smiled, her eyes bright. "You sound like my father. He tried to help people too." Evan looked down. "Then he must have been a good man." Her smile faded. "They took him away. He never came back." Evan didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between them, heavy with loss. As they continued walking, the wind began to howl. A sandstorm was forming in the distance, a swirling wall of dust and lightning. "Storm's coming," Evan shouted. "We need shelter." They ran toward a cluster of old wrecks half buried in sand. The metal remains of a crashed cargo ship offered weak cover. Evan pulled the girls inside just as the storm hit. The wind screamed outside, shaking the wreck. Dust filled the air, making it hard to breathe. The girls huddled together, and Evan covered them with his jacket. Lyra looked up at him. "You shouldn't protect us so much. We're dangerous." Evan raised an eyebrow. "You think I don't know that by now?" She frowned. "We don't want to hurt anyone. But when fear takes over, the energy comes out. We can't stop it." Evan leaned closer. "Then don't be afraid. I'll be afraid for both of us." For the first time, Lyra laughed softly. That's a human thing to say. Outside, lightning cracked across the desert. The wreck trembled, metal screaming under pressure. The youngest cried, "Evan, it's breaking!" He grabbed his blaster and looked outside through a broken window. The sandstorm had grown worse. He saw flashes of red lights moving through the dust. Drones. The Syndicate had sent machines to scan the storm. "They found us again," he muttered. He aimed carefully and fired. The first drone exploded in sparks. The second moved closer, its red beam cutting through the storm. Evan shot again, but the wind blew his aim off. The laser missed. "Lyra," he shouted. "Can you do that energy thing again?" She hesitated, eyes wide. "We can't control it." "You don't have to control it, just focus it." Evan yelled. "Think about keeping everyone safe." The girls joined hands, closing their eyes. Their bodies began to glow faint blue. The light grew stronger until it filled the entire wreck. Outside, the sandstorm shifted violently. The wind turned around, spinning faster, sharper, forming a protective wall around them. The drones tried to enter but were torn apart by the energy swirling through the storm. Evan shielded his face from the bright light. "You're doing it!" he shouted. The storm obeyed them now, moving like a living creature. The energy calmed slowly as the girls opened their eyes again. They looked shocked, breathing heavily. Rena whispered, "We didn't mean to do that." Evan looked around at the wreck, now quiet and still. "Whatever you did, it saved our lives." When the storm passed, the desert was silent again. Broken drone pieces lay scattered across the sand. The girls stepped outside, their small feet crunching over the debris. They looked up at Evan with wonder and fear. "We made the storm listen," Lyra said softly. Evan smiled faintly. Then maybe this planet's on our side after all. But deep down, he knew something else. The Syndicate wouldn't stop now. The signal from those drones would bring their army straight to them. He looked at the girls and said quietly, "We have 1 day left to reach the outpost. After that, we fight." The girls didn't answer. They just held his hands as the twin suns sank behind the horizon, painting the desert blood red. And somewhere far away, high above the clouds, the Syndicate's command ship received a signal. A cold voice said, "Lock coordinates. Prepare ground assault." The hunt was far from over. The desert night on Virella was cold and silent. A strange calm filled the air after the storm. Evan Carter and the 5 alien girls rested near the remains of the wreckage, their small campfire glowing weakly in the dark. The wind had stopped. Even the stars seemed to hold their breath. Evan sat on a rock, polishing his blaster and staring at the horizon. He hadn't slept in days. His eyes were red, his beard rough. But he couldn't rest, not now. The Syndicate would come. He knew it. Lyra sat beside him, wrapped in a blanket. Her glowing eyes watched the fire dance. "You don't sleep much," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Can't, I promised you I'd keep watch." She tilted her head. "You're just one human. You can't fight an army." Evan looked at her with a tired grin. "You'd be surprised what one human can do." The girls giggled quietly, but their laughter carried fear. They had seen too much. They knew what was coming. Hours passed. The fire slowly died down, leaving only orange embers. Then, in the distance, a sound, low, mechanical, growing louder. Evan's hand went to his weapon instantly. "They're here," he whispered. The girls looked up in panic. Faint red lights appeared across the horizon. Drones, dozens of them flying low. Behind them, massive ships descended, shaking the ground. "They found us," Lyra said, trembling. Evan grabbed his pack and stood up. "We run now!" They ran across the rocky plain, the drones chasing from above. Beams of red light swept across the desert, searching. Explosions followed, throwing sand into the air. Evan fired at the nearest drone, hitting it dead center. It exploded in a flash of light. But for everyone he destroyed, 2 more appeared. "Keep moving," he shouted. "Don't stop!" The ground rumbled as a Syndicate dropship landed ahead, cutting off their path. Dark figures stepped out, tall armored soldiers with glowing masks. Lyra gasped. "They'll take us again." "Not while I'm breathing," Evan said. He raised his blaster and fired. The shot hit one soldier square in the chest, knocking him back. He ducked behind a rock, reloading as plasma bolts flew past him. The girls huddled together behind him, crying. "Evan," he shouted back, "stay low. I've got you." But there were too many. The Syndicate soldiers advanced, spreading out. Their leader, a tall alien with silver armor, stepped forward. His voice echoed through a loudspeaker. "Human, surrender the assets. You have no chance." Evan yelled back. "They're not assets, they're children." The alien chuckled darkly. "They are property. You're a fool for protecting them." Evan glanced at the girls. Their terrified faces gave him strength. He whispered to himself, "Then I'll be a fool to the end." He stood up and fired again, moving quickly, drawing their attention away from the girls. Plasma bolts exploded around him, lighting the night. But then something changed. The air began to shimmer. The ground under the girls started to glow faintly blue. "Lyra," Evan called, turning back. "What's happening?" Lyra and the others were standing now, hands joined, eyes closed. The energy that had once appeared only by accident now pulsed through them in rhythm. "It's happening again," Mira shouted. Lyra's voice echoed, layered and calm. "No, this time, it's us, not fear. Not pain, us." The ground shook violently. A ring of light formed around them, expanding outward. The syndicate soldiers stumbled back, shouting in confusion. Evan shielded his eyes as the light grew brighter, swirling like a storm reborn. Dust and sand lifted into the air. The soldiers opened fire, but the energy absorbed every shot. Then came the sound, deep, thunderous, like the planet's heart beating. The girls lifted their hands together. Blue lightning flashed from the sky, striking the ground between them and the syndicate forces. The shockwave sent the soldiers flying. The ships overhead lost control, spinning out and crashing into the desert. Evan could barely breathe. The power radiating from the girls was enormous, but it didn't hurt him. The energy wrapped around him softly, almost protective. He looked up at Lyra, her hair flowing in the energy wind. "Lyra, stop! You'll burn yourselves out." Her voice echoed again. "We're not burning. We're remembering." The ancient symbols they had seen in the ruins appeared in glowing lines on the ground beneath them. It was as if the planet itself was responding. The syndicate leader tried to retreat, screaming orders to his troops. "Fall back! Fall back!" But the light followed him. The earth cracked open, swallowing the machines, consuming the soldiers in a wave of glowing dust. When it was over, silence returned. The energy faded slowly. The girls collapsed, exhausted but alive. Evan rushed to them, checking their pulses. "You're okay," he whispered, relief flooding his voice. "You did it! You actually did it!" Lyra opened her eyes weakly. "We didn't do it alone," she said softly. "The planet helped us. It protected its children." Evan looked around at the desert. No sign of the syndicate, no storm, only quiet light spreading across the horizon. He finally sat down beside them, breathing hard. "Remind me never to make you angry," he said with a faint smile. Lyra smiled back weakly. "We're done running now, aren't we?" He looked toward the rising dawn. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But now the whole galaxy will know what happened here." The first light of morning touched their faces, warm and golden. The planet of Virella, once filled with pain, now seemed to breathe again, and somewhere deep below the surface, the ancient carvings glowed once more, a sign that something old had awakened. And it was not finished yet. The dawn on Virella was unlike any before. The twin suns rose together, bathing the wasteland in golden light. The storm clouds had cleared completely, leaving behind an endless calm sky. Evan Carter sat quietly beside the 5 alien girls. They were sleeping peacefully for the first time in days, wrapped in blankets near the wreckage. The blue marks on their skin still glowed faintly, but now it was gentle, almost like a heartbeat. He looked at them with tired eyes and a faint smile. "You've earned your rest," he whispered. The desert around them was silent. No more gunfire, no syndicate ships, no storm. Only the soft hum of the wind, but Evan knew it wouldn't stay quiet forever. The syndicate would return once they regrouped. He needed help. He activated his emergency beacon, one of the few devices that still worked. Its weak signal blinked into the sky, calling for rescue. As he waited, he looked again toward the horizon where the battle had taken place. The ground was scorched with strange glowing patterns, the same ones from the ruins. It was as if the planet itself had written a message in light. He didn't understand what it said, but somehow it felt like gratitude. Hours passed. The suns climbed higher. Then at last the sky shimmered, 3 ships descending from orbit. Evan jumped to his feet, hope rising in his chest. "Rescue ships!" The girl stirred, blinking in confusion. "Who are they?" Rena asked sleepily. "Humans," Evan said. "Friends." The ships landed gently nearby, kicking up sand. Soldiers in white armor stepped out, their flags bearing the mark of the Human Federation of Colonies. One of them ran toward Evan, saluting sharply. "Commander Carter, we received your signal." "What happened here?" Evan sighed, glancing at the girls. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." The officer looked around at the strange glowing sand and broken syndicate ships. "Try me, sir," Evan nodded slowly. "I found them," he said, pointing to the children. "They were being hunted. Used as experiments. I couldn't leave them." The officer frowned. "They're not human." "No," Evan said firmly. "But they're children, and they're under my protection." The officer hesitated. "Command will want to question them." "Study them, maybe." Evan stepped forward, his voice calm but strong. "Then you tell Command they'll have to go through me first." The officer met his eyes and saw something unshakable there. He nodded quietly. "Understood, sir." Lyra stepped closer, holding Evan's hand. "Are we safe now?" she asked in her soft, melodic voice. Evan smiled down at her. "As long as I'm breathing, yes." The soldiers began setting up a field shelter. Medics examined the girls gently, amazed by their glowing veins and faint energy pulses. One medic whispered, "They're beautiful." As night returned, a communication officer approached Evan. "Sir, command requests a report. They want to know what happened here." Evan looked at the stars before answering. "Tell them humanity didn't fight for glory. We fought because children cried for help, and that's something we always answer." The officer smiled slightly. "That's one way to make history, sir." Days passed as the Federation scientists studied the planet carefully. They discovered that Varela wasn't just any world. It was alive. Its core filled with ancient bioenergy that responded to emotion and consciousness. The Syndicate had tried to harness it, but through the girls the planet had awakened and chosen to protect life instead of destroy it. News spread across the galaxy quickly. A human had stood against the Syndicate to save alien children, and the planet itself had risen in his defense. On distant worlds, people began whispering a new saying. When a child cries, humanity listens. Evan and the girls were brought to the Federation's central world where they received full asylum. The girls were placed under protection, free to live, learn, and grow without fear. Lyra stayed close to Evan, following him everywhere. One day, while they walked through the gardens of the capital, she looked up and said, "You never asked for a reward." Evan smiled. "I didn't do it for a reward. I did it because it was right." She tilted her head. "You humans are strange," he laughed softly. "We get that a lot." Later that evening, Lyra stood on a balcony looking at the stars. She whispered something in her native tongue, a soft melody. The stars shimmered faintly as if answering her call. Evan stepped beside her. "What are you saying?" She smiled. "I'm telling the stars that we're not afraid anymore, and that when they see humans, they should remember kindness." Evan nodded slowly. "That's a good message." Far away in the deep black of space, a new Federation broadcast began transmitting the story of Varela, the story of one man who stood between hunters and the innocent, and the children who awakened a planet's heart. It became a legend told across countless worlds, the human who answered the plea. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, 5 little alien girls still whispered his name when they saw the stars. Evan Carter, the man who heard them cry and never turned away.